Oh my gosh. Well, Blade is wow, it's been such a journey for me because I many years ago I was a competitive figure skater and I spent 3 years training in Colorado, living, in a dormitory with other skaters. I mean, this was in the early 80s, so it was fairly unsupervised, and I was, living away from home from 13 to 16, and really very powerful years of my life, very complicated years, which I never thought I would write about. But most of my work delves into childhood trauma, and these, you can always see the threads between the past and the present. And a lot of that is because those years were so formative for me and the person that I am today, even though I have very little to do with figure skating. And when my agent suggested that I sort of dive into this world and try to, find some fictional material, I was like, whoa, really? Okay, this is going to be a journey. And I actually dedicate the book to him because he really had to hold my hand through a lot of it. I didn't even know where to begin. And he had to, sort of help me mine my own stories to come up with these great fictional characters. So Anna Robbins, um, she's an attorney. She specializes in defending juvenile and teenage criminal defendants, adolescents who have been accused of violent crimes. She has a lot to say about raising kids and caring for kids and protecting their childhoods and what happens to children when they are exposed to things that aren't healthy, when they're abused or misused or neglected, and even when they have just trauma that occurs because of life. And so she goes back to this training facility in Colorado where she trained for figure skating years ago and left abruptly. So 14 years ago, something terrible happened and she left that world and never looked back. But now the daughter of one of her good friends is a skater there and is accused of murdering the assistant coach with the heel of her skating blade. So she goes back to try to figure out what happened and come up with a defense for this girl before she's charged. So it's not like a drawn out legal um, drama at all. It takes place over 3 days in a snowstorm. And we hear from Anna now while she's defending and trying to get the story out of young Grace Montgomery and the town. So she's trying to piece together what happened to this coach. But we also go back in time through another point of view to Anna when she was younger and skating there. And that story takes place over 3 years. So you get to march through time with Anna in the past and see what actually happened to her and these other three young girls who called themselves the orphans because they were all there without their parents. And so it kind of it has the same feel as some of my other books where you go back in time and now you're forward in time and you're getting to hear the story from two different eras in the character's life. I don't need any more challenges with these plots. It's like, no, I actually, everything that's added in like that is done to facilitate either the pacing of the story or the atmosphere, the stakes. Perhaps in this situation, the snowstorm adds to the stakes and also puts the characters in peril while this is all going on. It creates this kind of mood that of isolation, and that these characters are having these interactions alone in these secluded places. No one's driving around. The rink is closed for the storm. It's eerie and quiet. And so that it was done for that reason. But I find now that I have my method down of how I go about plotting. but it's always challenging. It's just, there's always that, okay, I really want this to happen because that would be cool. And now how can I connect them and how would it make sense that they're connected? And always have this drive to connect all of the plot threads together. And I just finished a draft of a new book actually. And, I was sitting there writing it and I'm like, oh, what if I could make these things from the past connect to these things? Like, how could I connect them? And would that make sense? And then you end up building, plot from there. With Blade, I actually added in these little short chapters that are transcripts from interviews with witnesses. So you don't really know there's a prosecutor who's questioning them. You don't really know what for or in what context until the end of the book. But that was done to help give some information to the reader that the characters either don't know or there wasn't a natural place to have them tell it. So, I had this little list of information, like I need the reader to know this. Who knows that? And who can tell them? So I ended up bringing in these little interview sections, and it also made it really great for the audiobook because we turned those sections into fully scripted sections. So we actually have a full cast in Blade just for those chapters. Nobody died when I was skating, but there were stories I had to leave out. Crazy things happened. I mean, we were, teenagers set loose in, this highly competitive, unsupervised place far from our homes. It was, the antics and some of the more tragic things that happened too, to, the people around me. Yeah, it was a lot. And of course it's a work of fiction. So, I, took the things that I experienced and tried to make them broader themes and then narrowed them in on fictional characters. But yeah, it's, look, the Tanya Harding, situation with Nancy Kerrigan. I'm sure do you remember that story? Yeah. It's, I feel like these competitive sports situations are just sort of great territory to explore, when you push human nature to the limits. And especially when you do that with young people whose brains are not fully formed. We're not fully formed till we're 24, 25, 26 years old. So most of these athletes are, their brains are still developing and they're missing parts of their frontal lobes that make decisions and all of that. So it's there's a lot to mine when you get into these competitive sports where the athletes are young. It's chilling. Yeah. For me, the biggest lesson I learned when I went out there, I was 13. So, my life had revolved around this little band of skaters and my coach back home, and it just had a different atmosphere. The parents, they all looked out for the kids because the parents were all around. So we carpooled sometimes, or if we all went away to a training camp together, whatever parents went would look out for us. And so when I went to, this training facility, it was a step up. There were, Olympic champions there. My coach had trained Dorothy Hamill and Peggy Fleming and Robin Cousins. And, he was an Olympic level coach. And so there were skaters from all around the world, the champions, national champions from many, many countries. And then, a lot of rising stars from our country. And I was still at a very low level when I went there. I was just a novice skater. So, I guess I had promise, but I never really got to those levels before I quit. But when my first lesson that I think was so jarring was that you can't, the mothers and the parents and, the other athletes, like, you can't trust anybody. And it was like, wait, what? Like, I can't just go up to any adult and be like, could you help me? Like, what do you mean? They're going to find a way to take advantage of you or to, why do they want to help you? When, I mean, this doesn't apply to all of them. So to all of the skating mothers out there, yes, I know a lot of you are so wonderful and so supportive and such good people, but there are a handful of, you know, people, even the grown-ups, not just the skaters, but the parents and the other coaches. And it's, yeah, it was, it you had to watch your back. There's no doubt about it. You had to watch your back. And of course, this is a dark thriller. So I focused on, the negative aspects. And there are also some heroes in the book as well. And I certainly had mine. I had some, people who really stepped in to be helpful to me and supportive of me. And actually, this is, one of my favorite anecdotes from that time is that one of the idols that I'd had as a young skater had trained there, and I ended up living with her mother. And she would come back, come back to town to visit. And when I was really struggling towards the end, she was the one who helped me see a path forward with school. And I quit like 6 months later, and then went to school and on to college and law school and working at Goldman Sachs. And like I just pursued, I pursued other dreams. And that moment of having, when you have your idol sort of say to you, hey, skating isn't everything, like there's other stuff in the world. Like you don't see it now, but it's there waiting for you. There's so much more out there. You're not defined by what's, you're skating and the fact that this dream didn't come true and that you kind of, crashed and burned. Like, you got all this other stuff going on. And yeah, so there were people like that too, who were just, really instrumental in guiding me out of that experience and into the life that I have now. So